One day, like any other, we see a spider about to attack a rabbit. At the right time, using his thunder power, and ends all the spiders in an instant. He still asks if they were all there, since they didn't even serve as an army, comments on the amount of hair, asking what they would do with so much hair like that. Sui appears asking if they had already spiders, because he wanted to do basically. Mukuda replies that Uncle Fell already took, so it will be at another time. As a good boy, understands all this, and then Fell goes asking if Sui doesn't treat him in a very different way. The protagonist replies to Fell that he is also full of desire. Every day he appears asking for a different type of vegetables, and he, Mukuda, is the one who needs to satisfy all his whims there. Fell, a little embarrassed, screams because he's hungry now, since he spent the whole day running a legendary beast on his back, allowing him to carry highlights that he spiders he guards without any inventory and changing realizes he doesn't have much meat to eat, so he has the idea of preparing gyozas. Both Fell and Sui get really excited, right? Mukuda explains that first he will open the online store to buy the dough. Realizes that he has wagyu available, and that makes him very excited, saying that they will only buy what they need, nothing more and nothing less than that. Dough, chicken broth concentrated in sesame oil, and with everything ready, starts cooking. First he chops the vegetables, then puts the general orc meat in a bowl, adds chicken broth concentrated, soy, sesame oil and pepper. He kneads well and adds nearer and comments that his master is amazing, while Fell, seeing enthusiasm, starts Mukuda hands the dough to Sui and asks him to try to roll the filling. Follows the instructions, but the result is somewhat doubtful. They manage to improve, and as they already had many ready, Mukuda starts frying them. Basically, he explains that when they brown, they should add the dissolved flour in water, and when the water evaporates and starts to boil, put a string of sesame oil in a circle. In the end, he turns them over, and the gyozas are ready. Then, to enhance the flavor, Fell doesn't even listen. He devours every highlight that screaming that he was burning and began to drain. Is simply perfect. Sui also eats and agrees, man, it was really a delight. The two then lift the dishes, asking for more, and Mukuda, foreseeing another round, was already there preparing. After the wolf and slime were satisfied, finally he himself could eat and drink something. Screaming happily that he has nothing like gyozas with beer, suddenly a small dragon hits his face, screaming. Mukuda takes the fright. He sees the creature, recognizes him as a fairy dragon, something very rare in this world. Mukuda, confused, wonders if such small dragons really exist, and then, while they talk, thinking twice, the small dragon looks fixedly at the dragon, the size of a cat, devours everything with enthusiasm, showing on his face how much he liked it. He then begins to pull Mukuda's clothes, asking for more, and the protagonist, however, finds it adorable and underestimates over the entire because of its size, because his mouths are extremely agile and basically Marion Rice face of magic. Mukuda hears the dragon's voice saying that the food is delicious and asking for more. Confused, Mukuda asks Fell who just spoke, and Fenrir sighs and reveals that this type of dragon has now become his family, that his instincts were not deceiving him. He signed the contract just to be able to eat very delicious food. Mukuda shouts in despair, trying to understand what just happened. He asks if the dragon made a contract just for food. This is the best meal he has ever tasted. And with Mukuda by his side, he could eat even more delicious things. When asked if he could not become a human family, the dragon replies that no, on the contrary, and he would live more and have more fun, celebrating the new bond, while Mukuda wonders if he really has the power of decision in this whole story. But finally, the dragon approaches him and says that his first task as a master is to give him a small dragon, and Yukuda thinks Dora-chan and decides very well him Dora, since the dragon he heard the name simply fainted. He was not believing in something so ridiculous. Little offended dragon did not accept to be treated as a child. After all, he was a real dragon. When consulting the statistics of the creature, Yukuda found that he was 116 years old, wanting a more imposing name, but the human insisted that the name matched the dragon. Fell watched the scene, just confirming that he could not wait for Yukuda, remembering that when Hoti, Dora felt understood and approached the wolf, sharing the same frustration. Soon after, the adorable Sui joined the group, excited with the new companion. That despite the trouble seeing them together, they seemed to get along very well. Later, the group went to the text city. And there, the receptionist of the guild, Fura, informed that the registration of the new family had been completed. She was surprised because she would not imagine seeing the dragon being registered as a relative. Soon after, and then she told the guild master, and he was simply astonished to see the little dragon recognizing him as a feral wasting time. Creatures about which he had heard in old stories, but something strange was happening in the northern forest, and for a few days the mating season of the region began to highlight that a thread produced by magical insects from the forest was essential for local trade because it served as a raw material for the high-quality fabrics of the city. Without this resource, the local economy would end up collapsing. Yukuda, hesitant, considered the forest too dangerous, but Dora showed confidence, stating that the region was no more than a territory full of weak monsters. And during a conversation, Yukuda commented that there was no problem since those creatures reproduced very quickly and were hunted frequently. Noting that it was the first time someone had completed a mission before even officially receiving it. The dwarf explained that the thread of the tarantula's shell was highly valuable, and that their meat, when cooked by this discovery, was a nigari. Yukuda decided to deliver the material for processing, asking only to leave the meat ready for consumption. Accepted the request, ensuring that he would prepare everything personally. Later, suggestion of the guild master to visit the local market, famous precisely for its fabrics, with excellent quality and also an affordable price. When he got there, he was impressed with the beauty and texture of the materials. The owner of the store reinforced that type of fabric was not found in the quality that was offered. Motivated, thought that was decided to take advantage of the opportunity and determined to acquire new and comfortable clothes. Back to the guild, Master Rodolfo had already completed the preparation of the tarantula. Noting that the meat resembled a crab, the curious dish, he hesitated before trying, uncertain about the taste of that peculiar agaria. However, when Yukuda tries a new ingredient, he realizes that the taste is incredible, unexpected discovery, very similar to that decides to prepare a real party full of dishes made with Yukuda made this moment even more special by dedicating a celebration to Dora as cheerfully as possible, savoring the food and welcoming a new member of the family. While the others enjoyed everything, Yukuda decided to prepare something he loves, grilled crab. But Dora commented that this was the result of his incorporation, and Yukuda, without a choice, ended up sharing his grilled crab with everyone. While preparing more portions, Dora approached and praised the taste, saying that he did well to follow his instinct. Dora then explained he was near the city of Carolina, he ended up losing Andreas. He caused a great commotion among the forest monsters. Upon hearing this, Yukuda finally understood. The monsters were in panic because of the which was him, and reacted by trying to eliminate the threat. Later that same night, Yukuda relaxed in the bathroom. He was trying to get crab, while Fel and Dora rested satisfied. Already preparing to sleep, he thought of visiting Rodolfo the next day to deliver the tarantulas, although he felt that he was forgetting something. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the gods were anxiously waiting for their offerings, which, by the way, were delayed. The next day, Mukuda delivers Rodolfo's breasts and also offers him some of the crab he had prepared. Then he decides to check other things in his inventory that he removes from there ahead of the Earth Dragon, that he had not done anything with it. He couldn't leave it standing. He asks if the dwarf knew someone in Dolomé who knows how to deal with dragon parts, and the curious dwarf asked the reason. Mukuda then showed the dragon that he needed someone capable of dismantling it, dismembering the dragon. And the dwarf was surprised. It was the first time he had seen something that like this so close is worth so much that it would be possible to buy an entire country someone with it. Who can help. The guild master of adventurers, Grateful Mukuda then leaves for Dolan along with his family. Without realizing, the gobs were still waiting impatiently for the offerings. Some were even making fun, without noticing that mysterious figures were watching and laughing at this scene. After a long journey, Mukuda finally spotted the city of Dolan from afar and fell comments that if it were called the city of the dungeon, so he begins to agree with conquering it, saying that Piu in a dungeon would be a good thing. At this point, Dora remembers that he actually needed another guy to be able to dismantle the Earth Dragon. Hearing this, Fel gets extremely excited and asks if he could finally eat that meat. Fenrir leaves at an absurd speed towards the city of Dolan. When they got to the entrance, they noticed a huge necessary to show the card they had from the guild to be able to enter the city. If you don't have the card, you must pay the tax, and before that would also have to do the same, and Mukuda confirms, since there is no other option. Fel then asks if it wouldn't be faster for him to just jump over the wall. Mukuda says no, because that would be a crime, and besides, they couldn't go back, which would mean that they couldn't end up with absolutely nothing there. This Fel understands, hearing and even finding it uncomfortable. Mukuda realizes that he ended up drawing attention and apologizes to the people, explaining that there is no reason to worry, since those are his relatives. Causes a shock in those present when they saw that to the wolf and the dragon as family. Seeing the confusion, approach Mukuda and ask what was going on. The protagonist explains that he heard that a renowned of the guild lives there and shows his adventurer card. The guards begin to check the card until an elf arrives, saying that Mukuda is his guest, and in the face of the doubt, Mukuda asks, and the blonde elf confirms, presenting himself as Elant, the guild master. But when he sees Dora-chan, the elf is calmly impressed with an open mouth. Already inside Elant's room, he now comments that Rodolfo had already informed about his visit, and then ordered to bring something for the little dragon to settle down. Pulley, impregnated with magic, which was used by spherical dragons. Dora ignores and sits on the sofa. The elf cheerfully writes down in his notebook. Soon after, Elant begins to serve a cup of tea to Mukuda and a magical flowers to the dragon, waiting anxiously for him to drink. Dora refuses. Elant notes this quickly too, from the royal library say that these dragons feed on magic. Leaving the subject aside, Elant asks where the dragon is and if they will have a carriage to take everything. And Mukuda replies that he carries it inside his box of items. The elf gets excited and suggests that they go straight to the warehouse to start work. When he tries to leave the room, Hugart appears, warning that he has a meeting with the guild and the merchants in the afternoon. Elant asks to postpone this meeting, but Hugart, with a firm look, without an option. The elf decides to just change because he was determined to examine the dragon. Mukuda to let him take a look. Elant began to tell stories from 238 years ago, when there was a dragon hunting squad. Able to be part of it because it was only for class. Even after reaching his S rank, there was never another dragon hunt. Mukuda then took the earth dragon out of his box of items, leaving the elf took the tape, saying that he needed to register everything perfectly. The impatient Fowl began to scream for him to bring everything soon, but remembering that he was in front of the guild master and taking advantage of the moment what the spherical dragon used to eat, in case he didn't eat magic nectar. Unintentionally, Mukuda mentioned the name Dora-chan, more aroused the elf, who asks if that's the name of the dragon. Confirms, explaining that everyone there eats food, and then imagines a varied diet. Right, this confuses the elf because he believed that dragons only fed on flower manifests and says to Mukuda that he has never heard of dragons, revealing that they eat only everything nectar, but prefer meat specifically. the message, the elf does not understand since he did not hear Dora speak. Then begins to explain that he communicates, which makes Alur even more surprised and irritated, exclaiming that he has never heard that a dragon can use telepathy in his entire life, asking for more explanations, and Hingga appears again, however, asking for permission to take if they would give the finishing dismantling the dragon. Upon hearing this, Alur asks if they only want the meat, the other parts of the dragon, which are extremely valuable. Fel replies that he doesn't care about the rest, he just wants to eat, and they then compare the taste of the meat. Alur, at that moment, discovering that they are going to eat the dragon's meat, with tears in his eyes, he begs Mikuda to let him, saying that he would pay with all the money he has, and Mikuda would even like to leave it, but he doesn't know if Fel will find it very good. Fel approaches and says that if Alur managed to cut in an impeccable way, he would let him eat a piece, which is more than enough for the elf, who, with happiness, thanks the wolf with his heart. Leaving the office, both Fel and Mikuda are exhausted. As the elf spent hours asking countless questions, Mikuda, man, he's already tired and decided to buy something at the online store. There was a discount fair going on there, and then he explained to companions that it was a place in the world where there were many delicious buying Sukan there. He notices there is a version that comes with a grill plate, and when listing everything, he starts to comment that the vegetables on the plate, which irritates Fel because he doesn't want to eat more leaves. Mikuda decides to cook, ensuring that the result will be delicious. In fact, he doesn't make a mistake. Everyone loves the meal and even ask for more. Later, when everyone was sleeping, Mikuda takes the opportunity to eat a souvenir. Still awake, feels curious, and Mikuda then gives him a little to try, and exclaims that it is delicious. This draws the attention of others who also want to try it. As soon as they try it, they are fascinated, and Fel, being huge, only Mikuda refuses because he had bought the sweets in secret to eat alone. Fel then asks if the master intends to disobey his family, infuriates Mikuda, who shouts that it should be the opposite. The next day, we see the protagonist completely exhausted, and because did not sleep at all. They looked like children who had too much coffee. At the agreed place, they find Mikuda asks what happened to Alan and the terrestrial dragon there. At that moment, the elf appears, saying that he is extremely excited because he spent the day studying the dragon's body, and claims that he had not felt so gratified he had not yet started cutting the meat. In another scene, the elf finally tries to cut using the most precious treasure of the guild, a mithril knife. However, a simple touch and the blade breaks in the middle. Everyone is shocked. Elf explains that the ancient texts said that mithril should cut it easily. He does not care so much because at least he can how hard and magnificent the dragon's skin is. Fel gets desperate. Mikuda comments that now something superior to the mithril knife would take a long time because the whole journey was in vain, and he could not now savor the dragon's flesh, mentioning that there may be a mithril ore inside the dungeon, Fel, and that going there to distress and finish off the monsters is very good. Mikuda tries to convince him not to go, knowing that if Fel enters the dungeon it would cause destruction, which would make it difficult to travel, and consequently decides to distract him by saying that it was time to eat, and makes Fel forgetting the idea of the dungeon, although he knows that he would need to think of a better solution. Meanwhile, the gods began to complain that they wanted offerings, and other gods also heard the conversation. Angry, they asked if they thought they could deceive them. With Mikuda, the first one as introduces himself, god of the Ferrari, and the second as god of war. Hearing all this, Mikuda has an idea and asks if he can ask for advice, asking the gods if it is already imagined a knife, and the protagonist ends up confirming and asking explains that if he had his blessing, which is the blessing of the Lord of the Ferrari, even better products, even using the same mithril. However, it requires something in return, alcohol. Without many options, Mikuda accepts. The blessing of the Ferrari is granted to Fel, and while Dora, the blessing using the blessing with a little mithril that Mikuda had achieved before, they created a mithril plus and knife. Then Mikuda was excited because now he didn't need to go to the dungeon, but he realizes that the blessing of combat, but they also end up getting more aggressive, which makes him regret this decision a little. After that, Mukuda visits Eland once again, who is having an existential crisis for not being able to find a better blade. Hands Yulja the mithril knife that Sui forged and asks him to take carefully approaches the dragon's body knife, terrified, of course, mistake that can destroy both the blade and his hopes. Only the knife easily cuts the thick skin of the dragon. This surprised Eland a lot with its quality. He wonders how Mukuda got such an incredible piece, and look, Mukuda just pretends he got it from a secret source. Eland almost demands Mukuda to reveal the secret, but he calms down and goes back, and Mukuda asks how long it will take to finish all that work. Eland replies that at least 3 days, okay? Fell gets angry because he still has to wait so long to dragon is a huge monster with a lot of meat to be processed. Fell agrees but suggests that they explore the dungeon while Eland was afraid of the danger. Mukuda refuses. He starts begging him to let everyone have a little fun. Sometime later they arrive at the entrance of the dungeon, where the receptionist warns Mukuda that the team can take up to a month to get out a lot of food, and plans to explore the deepest floors, explaining that no one has ever completed the 30 floors of that dungeon. Hearing this, Mukuda immediately thought about giving up and going home, but they would have to eat the rotten remains in the dark of the dungeon. Mukuda then takes them on a shopping tour to be able to buy a portion of vegetables to cook in the dungeon. Meanwhile, he notices a magic stove outside a store, and Fell asks why such a big stove. He explains that it would be very useful to cook. At this point, the store owner appears and starts promoting his products to Mukuda. He explains that the stove also has entire monsters, which arouses an immediate interest in Mukuda and try new monster recipes. When Mukuda asks the price, the seller says it costs 860 gold coins. The value almost makes him have a heart attack, but Fell presses with others also existing. Mukuda goes there and finally agrees to buy a magic stove. Prepares for dinner in huge pots. He asks for help, of course, soft pieces to be able to start serving. The next day decides to cook several meals for a few days before they enter the dungeon. For the first dish, he decides to cook General Orc meat after preparing some cabbage rolls with vegetable meat. When adding the ingredients, he feels very satisfied for taking advantage of everything that was left. So he makes a soup of orc meat, and finally a soup of wyvern with thick sauce seasoning. Although Fell gets the dishes ready, trying to believes that they are ready for the first days inside the dungeon. The hungry companions are encouraged to eat, but he reminds everyone that it is all the food they have. Cleaning the room when Sui appears with a sword that he forged especially for him. Mukuda admires the son of the blade at that moment, thinking that with it he would be safer in the dungeon. Happy to have helped his master on his shoulder, Yuja knocks on the door urgently. The body of the earth dragon was completely processed. Mukuda then prepares to go to the guild, but Yuja prevents him, saying that he is too busy to accompany Eland. Feeling bad for the man, by all the jars alone to the adventurers guild. Eland ignores Mukuda for a few minutes, material obtained from the rest of his life. Finally notices he can buy some items for the guild, and Mukuda agrees, no problem. After all, he was practically bankrupt after buying the magic stove. Eland buys 2 jars of dragon blood on the market that they are used to make the most powerful, which has even stronger properties. Finally asks if he can keep one of the dragon's fangs to be able to forge a legendary sword. Mukuda agrees to sell, but is surprised when Eland explains that just these few items would already empty the entire guild's safe. With that offers about 4,000 gold coins for shocked everything, to realize that only some materials are worth so much money, and wonders how much he would get if he decided to sell everything, sell that entire dragon at once. Meanwhile, Fel is not very impressed. He does not see any dragon meat and suspects that he is hiding it for himself, but Eland calmly explains that he is storing the meat in a special refrigeration room, find an elaborate ice magic system, preserving tons of meat. Fel is satisfied with his prize for now, while Sui helps Mukuda keep everything in his inventory. When they finish, Elan shyly asks if he can try some of the dragon's meat, and Mukuda remembers his promise and agrees, leaving everyone excited to try that exotic flavor. Elan takes him to his house, to show where Mukuda sets he also has an item stove, which is rare, and it is the first time that Mukuda sees another with this ability. While Elan talks about how he combined the magic of the wind and the forest to become an elite adventurer, Mukuda ignores him and starts seasons the large pieces of dragon meat with salt and pepper, peels some vegetables and prepares the dish with olive oil and condiments. Finally puts everything in the oven and waits for the roast to be ready. When the delicious smell makes the family salivate, he goes there and sees that the dish Mukuda finally understands that Fel was so excited, while the others eat in silence. The meat has an exotic and incomparable flavor. Fel satisfied already thinks about hunting more. Dragons could go extinct if that happened. When they finish the first dish, everyone can put more, right, repeat. And when serving new portions, Mukuda asks Dory if he doesn't mind eating from his own species, and the little pixie dragon replies that, man, he is of a different race from the dragons of the earth, so it doesn't count as cannibalism. Elrond is also only sighs and decides not to question. The elf thanks Mukuda for allowing him to experience such a divine meal, feeling truly blessed to have the chance to process and eat one of the most expensive creatures on the planet. They finish the whole meal. On the way back home, Fel feels full of energy after eating such a nutritious meat. Decided to send his offerings there to the gods in case he forgets later. Later that night, he sails through the dessert section of his online store, while the gods watch anxiously. Varen begins to ask Leonine if she somehow granted Mukuda some defensive ability, and she replies that she just gave a blessing from the wind. Varen at the time reprimands her, saying that it was too mean. Varen asked what he would do if Mukuda could get his life inside the dungeon, and this reminds them that Mukuda is the only connection they have with the areas of the other world, and they were all silent. The rest of the gods then said that they would have to prepare a special blessing for Mukuda. Meanwhile, Mukuda asks himself the reason for so much fuss and begins to send his offerings. But Hephaestus at that time talks about granting him a special protection, which Mukuda refuses at the time. He does not want to be stuck to another Mukuda without his consent. While Varen begins to laugh, happy to have to stoke more of his drink, the other gods also celebrate, relieved that Mukuda is protected. The next day he returns to the entrance of the dungeon with his group. There he meets the receptionist, worried about her first from other guilds. Introduced since the dungeon has become a recent popular why she moved while to another finishes the record and there the door realizes that she is just already prepared. Very excited for the challenge with his group. Venus remembers that there is no way for him to go back now, gathering Mukuda's courage, and they go down the stairs. At level 1, Fel already detects some weak monsters nearby. Mukuda remembers that the strongest creatures, the best treasures, are between level 10 and 15, so Fel suggests that he go up on his back to corridors, destroying all the monsters in his way. Suddenly an arrow comes out of nowhere and almost turns Mukuda into monster manure, but Fel's barrier blocks it all. Is intrigued by the fact that the dungeon has such elaborate traps, even being a natural structure with Fel's to then devour them by absorbing their nutrients, and while Fel continues his explanation, stronger arrows begin to hit the barrier, leaving Mukuda terrified. One of the traps so far is active, a huge trap of holes, but Fell uses his wind magic to be able to glide over these holes. Fell finally reaches the 10th floor. Mukuda asks what he wants to do. Dora is already finding the monsters are still very weak at this level, but Fell goes straight to the adventurers trembling when they arrive to see him, and Mukuda quickly explains that Fell is his family, so everyone calms down. Why they were gathered from the outside, the adventurers explain that there are some rules. While the group fights the boss, others cannot enter unless they are called to help, and even so, the main group gets all the spoils. The adventurers warn Mukuda about the dishonest groups that steal the items from others, and with more concern in their heads, Mukuda then decides to wait. His family begins to get bored, but he asks for patience, so the last group runs to the room and warns that now is into darkness, and the terrible poisonous tarantula begins to roar. Dora incinerates him screams like a little girl. The proud dragon flies away in the air, happy with his powers enhanced by the blessing of the god of war. When the boss's body disappears, several valuable items appear, and Mukuda picks up the spider leg. The items up, realizing that the skull automatically processes. Even tired, Fell drags him to the next level, where he would face a powerful General Orc as the final boss. Before Mukuda could feel any kind of fear, his group turns the orc into pork ribs, and after the 11th floor, the group continues to explore deeper. Feeling hungry, they all end up exhausted for a suitable place. He wanted to set up a camp, and Fell finds an open room there. There they also end up finding several groups resting in a safe area. While Mukuda's group settles in a corner, they are surprised by the reunion with Werner's group. Happy for the old friends there, that his team had recently entered the city to explore the dungeon, and Mukuda tells that he intended to visit the coastal city of Berlin, but Fell insisted and came to the dungeon first. And between laughs, the group notices Mukuda's new family members. Curious with Dora, Mukuda explains that he is a pixie dragon, and after asking about the creatures, the two girls in the group as a slime in the form of a nuclear asks how Mukuda ended up with two such exotic relatives besides Fell. He replies that they are just some selfish gluttons who follow him because of the food. Laughing at his own misfortune, Mukuda decides to share some of his dinner with the group, knowing that the meal is worth 10 times his fortune. Werner hesitates, be able to accompany him, as Werner's group had they hesitate to take some of these precious meals, but after the first bite, they devour everything very quickly. While everyone once again praises Mukuda's divine meal, what meat is made in soup, and when he replies that he used Waven's meat, the group almost chokes in amazement. That Fell and Sui hunted 3 of those such a rare ingredient, loaded with Waven's meat. Explains. Seeing that there was still so much meat left, they hesitate for a moment, everyone but finished eating, asking Werner's for another delicious to be able to explore a little more of the floor, and Mukuda wishes them good luck. For them to go to the deeper floors. Soon they begin to advance through the lower levels, treating the head of the dungeon as if they were simple street dogs. When they enter the 16th floor, Mukuda realizes that the atmosphere of the dungeon has become darker. Fell explains that all the dungeons change as they go deeper. Grabs Fell, suddenly notices a huge stone kicking behind him. Of course, Mukuda started running like a chicken, right? This before Fell destroyed the rock with the gust of wind. The force of the impact came out, throwing Mukuda face to the ground, but he quickly got up, and after a while, the group reached the 20th floor. Doesn't care much Dora about the power of his family. He was impressed when he heard Sui call him, showing a secret area on a specific wall there. When he began to inspect the hole, excited that he had got a treasure chest hidden in there. Before he could open the chest, Fell pulled him back, remembering his evaluator in the chest, and discovers that he was stuck in a poisonous gas that would cause worse conditions than, I don't know, a lung Disappointed, Mukuda gives up opening the chest, but Fell offers to open it, since the greater blessing protects him against poisons. Receives a message from Minnie, informing that Fell already has 3 lesser blessings from his servants, he must be able to resist the poison without problems. Excited, he encourages him to take advantage of the exciting challenges of the dungeon to the maximum, and knowing that he is safe, Mukuda goes there and opens the chest, and a cloud of toxic gas inside the chest and finds it completely empty. Furious for being deceived, he gains the motivation to go deeper into the much larger chest, get a real treasure. Notices that there may be something special opening inside it, and discovers that it is actually a disguised mimic. Even so, with his 3 lethal relatives next to him, he feels confident to face that mimic, so he imposes Myrtle's sword and takes a step forward, just for the chest to open, revealing a mouthful of prey, the mimic into pieces with his sword. Mukuda reacts. The defeated monster becomes the true treasure chest, and Mukuda opens it, finding several jewels and precious accessories. Dora finds a door to the 22nd floor, and everyone goes down for it. To a vast open sky is shocked instead of the haunted corridors they had been exploring. Even Fel gets excited to see what this new floor has to offer. On the other hand, Mukuda feels afraid that he may face some unexpected danger. However, Fel detects the presence of someone familiar in the area. They arrive at a clearing where a swarm of gigantic murderous mants begin to ambush them. While Mukuda wonders why he is still scared of this, Dora ignores all of them, screaming with Fel not to suggests that they should redeem the battles so that everyone can have fun, and everyone agrees with this idea. When the group finds a bear right after, Dora enters the field, piercing the animal's body like butter. Sui faces that they can paralyze him and suck all of his body fluids, but Sui simply melts them all with a laser. After walking for a while, Fel realizes that a presence that was approaching, and before checking, the boss of the interrupts, he suggests that they increase their status first, eating something from the online store. Fel knows that they are strong enough already, but does not miss the chance to eat some more jellies. Sit down to make one last order there. Mukuda decides to order some premium wagyu along with several other dishes, stack dishes and more dishes of delicious food. The group, as soon as the food arrives, they devour everything in an instant and ask for more. You have to repeat. Surprised by the speed, Mukuda serves a second round and tries to eat a little portion, but his family finishing everything, the exhausted little monsters lie on the floor to rest. Mukuda then decides to check Fel's status and is surprised to see an increase of 50%, and he begins to wonder if he exaggerated, but concludes that everything is fine, since curious to see how much he himself has increased. He discovers that he has only received an increase of 5%, and that leaves everyone astonished. After finishing analyzing his improvements, the group begins to walk towards the presence show that Fel was excited to be able to face a real opponent when Mukuda starts to feel very nervous. Soon Fel is surprised to see a snake, which was a rank S snake nearby. Recognizing how terrifying that creature is, internal almost has a heart attack and realizes he does not need to worry about it because of his blessings. Fel remembers that Dora also has a great blessing. This powerful creature will have enough courage to enter the battle like a cow, face the snake and it immediately throws a poisonous fog against them, but everyone resists and continues attacking. Fel paralyzes the snake with lightning, while Sue melts his neck with acid, and then Dora finishes the monster, crossing his neck, and murderous belly fillers of Mukuda celebrate with the defeated boss. Fel finds a magic circle that would teleport them to the next floor, and he to touch the formation at the same time, otherwise someone may be left behind. Following the advice, Dora climbs Mukuda's head while Sui jumps on his arms. Magic circle with his legs. Fel and the formation shines intensely and teleports them to another space, as if Mukuda realizes that although it looks like the previous floors, the hole was much bigger and Fel sees, so everyone follows there. Inside, Mukuda sees floor was designed to accommodate creatures of this size. Mukuda can plan how to defeat them. His group advances and exterminates them completely. After being defeated, the monsters now explore the huge floor as a huge so much everyone ends up tired. Mukuda decides to prepare a special banquet when he notices a very strange area filled with space without monsters nearby, so Mukuda decides to set up the kitchen set there. When Mukuda starts preparing the food, the beasts are excited to fill their bellies. They devour delicious sandwiches and rich soups, getting exhausted after a meal. It's time to sleep, and he agrees. However, before they can rest, a group of injured adventurers arrive, limping there to a safe place. After they lay down a partner who is seriously injured, they wait for Mukuda. If he has any healing potion, and he quickly takes one, and the leader begins to pour the potion on the man's wound, which instantly heals, leaving him surprised if Mukuda gave a high-level potion. And explaining that his potions have a higher quality than normal potions. Mukuda asks if his partner is okay, and the leader recovers very quickly thanks to this potion. While the relieved companions start crying there, introduces himself as a member of the group. After thanking Mukuda for the potions, he offers 15 gold coins, and Mukuda thinks it's too high a payment, right? Out of kindness, he offers some inferior quality potions, the same price, and the man is surprised at his generosity. Mukuda takes the opportunity to ask how his partner got hurt, and he reveals that they faced 3 springs in the boss's room. He asks Fel if these monsters are really dangerous. He explains that a spring is bigger than a minotaur. The group leader tells him that, in fact, the first time there was only 1 spring in the boss's room. When he returned, there were 3 of them, and the team was completely dominated. Even so, he believes that Mukuda would be fine. He has a Feng Shui legendary by his side. Mukuda gets a little embarrassed, realizing that group had already heard about his murderous beasts. The adventurer guarantees that he will not and disclose says that they would return to the surface in the morning. Fel opens his eyes lazily and tells Mukuda because he himself will destroy the springs. The next morning, as Mukuda's group advances deeper into the dungeon, he wonders if the Tempest group would be able to return safely. Fel reassures him, saying that they would be fine, especially some sandwiches that increase the attributes and help recover. They arrive at the boss's room, where Mukuda sees the springs sitting cross-legged. He is terrified by the powerful monsters. As always, his group ends up going on an attack. After his family turned the springs into fossils, enters the room and finds a magic bag among the spoils there. He realizes that time passes inside that bag in the same way as in, and decides to keep it because he finds it useful. Mukuda collects the rest of the bag, like a thief for keeping part of his partners. But Fel doesn't care. He warns that the next floors are also full of giant monsters, and Mukuda decides to face the bosses of the next floors. Up screaming on the floor like a defenseless baby. Poor monsters try to attack him desperately, but his perfect defense ability cancels all blows. Despite his strength, Mukuda is terrified he is too able to attack, so Dora ends the service for him. After cleaning the floor, the group quickly defeats the next ones and goes down to the 29th floor. Mukuda is surprised, knowing that they are 2 levels away from completing the dungeon. He enters the transport and appears on the 29th and is shocked to see a huge desert in front of his eyes. When Mukuda gets angry with that half-arid climate and his pets are excited to be able to explore the new place. He climbs on Fel's back to start the journey, quickly lose their strength because of the intense heat. When they stop moving, Mukuda notices Sui completely melted on the floor and puts him quickly inside the bag. Fortunately, Dora sees a rock nearby and everyone runs to rest in the shade. Even so, Mukuda is still bothered by the unbearable heat, so Fel launches a wind barrier to keep the air away. Mukuda is surprised by the effectiveness of the barrier, remembers that it can only last a few days before his mana runs out. To find a way out of that huge desert, Mukuda decides to save Fel's energy by buying some summer products. He buys a light sweatshirt, sunglasses, several drinks, with electrolytes to hydrate the group, just a good thing. After drinking the soft drinks, Mukuda buys ice to cheer everyone up, and they are very happy. But reality hits them when they need to return to the hot desert. Fel reminds Mukuda that the temperature will drop drastically, at night, so he needs to cover himself as much distance as possible during the day. As they advance through the desert, the group ends up finding huge sandworms, and as night approaches, everyone settles near a bonfire. Mukuda feels like he's freezing because of the intense, but Fel says he's even colder outside the barrier. That there is no other choice, Mukuda decides to order several thermal bags and warm clothes for them to warm up. Then they take out the pot to be able to prepare a hot meal that cheers everyone up. After a good while cooking carefully, he prepares a hot udon for everyone. When they taste the soft noodles, the group feels their stomachs warming up, rejuvenated after eating a very full plate. Mukuda that they are very close to the boss of the level. And upon hearing this, Mukuda asks everyone to rest well before the time has come, right? The group falls asleep in cozy futon's over there. They meet the final boss, the powerful golem of the earth. Unfortunately for Golem, Fell shatters him completely with a single ray, and when the boss is defeated, they find a magic circle in a huge hall. Fell asks if everyone is ready to walk to the end, and everyone agrees. He puts his paw on the teleporter and activates it, taking the group straight to the final boss of the dungeon. Fell notices that the monster is a behemoth. At this time, the group begins to get excited for the battle. Dora flies and throws her towards the monster, who shoots. Then Dora invests against the behemoth now, but the creature easily throws them back against the walls of the dungeon. Mukuda starts running and checks his injured companions, who comment on the absurd strength of this boss. Fell explains that the behemoths are naturally resistant to both physical and magical attacks, but still receive a little damage from each blow. Suddenly, the monster starts to advance over them and causing them to collide with the wall again. Orders them to attack with all their might to be able to break the behemoth's defenses, and the group unites in this attack. Makoto realizes that the monster looks smooth but Fell saying that he weakens little by little with each blow. He orders Sui and Dora to continue attacking together and surround, and then they unleash a flood of small attacks. The huge monster starts to roar. The guy into a rage, unable to hit the smaller opponents. Dora concentrates her energy, shoots several stacks of ice and finally pierces the behemoth and makes him bleed for the first time. Excited about the progress, Dora and Sui believe that they will win. The behemoth starts to charge a powerful beam of energy and shoots directly at Makoto. Fell saves him by raising his resistant ice, and he notices that Dora's attack was so effective because Sui's acid has weakened the monster's armor at that point. With this information, Fell orders Sui to cover the behemoth with slime obeys, growing even more his size, getting gigantic before diving the boss in a corrosive bath. The powerful acid melts the thick armor of the behemoth, causing Dora to be able to hurt him with more of his attacks. When the monster is already weakened enough, it's time for Fell to use what he had to use. He orders Sui and Dora to retreat and then release the supreme lightning he hits the behemoth in full on the weak spot, and the monster starts before giving his last sigh and ending up falling to the ground. After the defeated behemoth disappears, everyone celebrates victory and Mukuda runs to check the bag. He finds a legendary sword called Caleb and imposes that, realizing that it would be news everywhere if it leaked. While Mukuda keeps the sword in his item box, Fell asks him to serve food, saying he's tired, and Mukuda wonders why he can't go home first, but Fell is too impatient to wait. Finally, Mukuda agrees to reward the group for all the effort, and they start preparing a huge fried food banquet once again. Everyone enjoys it, happy to be able to relax and finish another episode like everyone else, eating cutely after an exhausting day. After finishing the meal, Mukuda down on the floor near the entrance to the dungeon. The adventurers around were very confused with that appearance out of nowhere. Then Mukuda explains that he was just returning from the last floor. They're facing shock. Fell proudly declares that they have just conquered that whole dungeon. Makoto feels uncomfortable, as he didn't want to get any attention, but it was too late for that. While the adventurers started bombing Mukuda, several questions about the bosses, about the treasures. Eren once again appears out of nowhere, congratulates his performance and drags Mukuda away, explaining that he needs to deliver a Adventurers Guild to complete the exploration. And when they return to the guild, Eren starts praising Dora again. Mukuda points to Fell and Sui, who also contributed equally to the victory. While the maniac for dragons bothers Dora in the background, Yuja asks Mukuda about all the types of items they found in that dungeon. Fell interrupts him, saying he wants his food first, but Mukuda keeps his patience. And he reaches his bottomless storage bag, takes out a box of Mimiko's jewels from there. And when he sees the box, both Yuja and Eren jump in shock. Since Mimikos are rare creatures and in very precious spoils, seeing their surprise reaction, Mukuda realizes that he must keep the legendary sword of the last level a secret. And then Eren asks Mukuda for a complete report on the dungeon, but Yuja starts to remember that he would have to give time for the team to rest. The creatures are all tired. After that, Mukuda prepares a bath, drinks a little milk with while sharing all his monstrous meat processors there alive. He tells everyone to take a shower after the drink, but Fell refuses to enter. Mukuda remembers Fell that if he doesn't take a shower, he'll end up pissing a lot. And then the insult was too much for that crazy dog. So Sue and Dora also tell him that he will look like garbage if he continues like this. Then Fell feels a little pressured by everyone's mockery, and suddenly he gets distracted by the noise. Mukuda thinks he was trying to change the subject, but Dora says she heard it too. Two children were running away from a monstrous Suddenly a girl stumbles in defense in front of the creature that is attacking. Mukuda arrives. He goes in time, sends Sue and Dora to turn the orc into processed meat, saving the lives of the little brothers. Mukuda arrives running to see the children are tormented, terrified, seeing a huge finger behind him. And then Mukuda tries to comfort them, saying Fell is just a glorified pet dog, which irritates him. The children realize that their lives were saved and begin to cry as the shock passes. This surprises Mukuda, and he tries to comfort them as much as he can. After calming down, he asks the name of the little ones. Boys present themselves as Darryl and the little sister. He says to Mukuda that they are from Dolan, which him shocks, since Dolan is 3 hours from the forest. He wonders why the children are not their parents, which leaves them in silence. They say they would answer if he gave them an orc, so he agrees. But Mukuda wonders how such small children will carry such a large creature. So Darryl reveals that he can use his item box ability. The boy tries to put the orc in the storage, but the giant body is too big to enter. Mukuda says he will help him put the orc inside. So he asks the children to explain the story. Darryl explains that he and Iris lived mother in Dolan while the father was an adventurer. One day the father went to a dungeon and never returned. The children's mother was left alone. And even everything possible to survive, their mother got sick one day. So Mukuda asks if she was better, and then Darryl says they took her to a priest. Although she has improved a little after the healing spell, she got sick again sometime later. The priest told the children that he could not cure the disease. They needed a high-level priest to come from the real capital. Unfortunately, the children had no money to call a priest from the capital. So they were completely alone trying to sell herbs to be able to pay for their mother's treatment. Hearing this painful story, even Mukuda got emotional. While the children believed that the orc finally give them enough money to help their mother. But Mukuda knows that orcs are common monsters. The children were far from getting the necessary amount, and he asks how to help those innocent little ones. Their bellies started to get hungry. So Fell and the rest also tell Mukuda that they want to eat, and then he decides to prepare a meal before doing anything else. The children offer to help to cook everything, but he says he will take care of it, thinking that the children are very good. Then he tells them to play with Sui and while Dora. The children play with the monsters, Mukuda decides to give them a real gift. He chops several onions there, caramelizes the meat and puts everything together. Mukuda adds a teriyaki sauce to the fried meat with some eggs next to it, and then he prepares a bread with vegetables, cheese, completing a beautiful hamburger that gives you water in your mouth. As soon as the children receive the hamburgers, they fall in love with the delicious flavor. While they devour each piece, Mukuda gives him some drinks too. Meanwhile, Fell gets irritated for not having received a gigantic stack of hamburgers. After receiving his hamburgers, the group also eats and everyone is full in the while end. Mukuda washes the dirty dishes. Children go there and thank him for the gift. Although Mukuda feels touched by their purity, pride ends up being hurt for calling him uncle. And hearing that Mukuda has become an uncle, makes a big face of disgust and goes out provoking him. Sometime later, the children start to take a nap, lying on Fell's soft fur, and Mukuda puts a blanket over them. He feels very bad knowing that the children work on tasks so dangerous to help his mother. While sleeping, Terry says he will help his mother and messes with Mukuda's feelings. He thinks he needs to buy some medicine for his mother at the online supermarket. But he doesn't know which medicine he has to take, since he doesn't know her disease. Mukuda decides to use some high-level potions. But Fell informs that the potions only treat wounds. So Fell says they need elixirs for the sick mother. However, elixirs are rare remedies capable of curing all diseases. Thus, Mukuda thinks it's impossible to get some. So he remembers Aaron's words about the dragons, which can be used to create rare elixirs. With that in mind, he gives Sui some of the dragon's liver and blood, asking if slime can create an elixir. And after checking the ingredients, Sui only says he can't say for sure, dissolves everything in his body to try anyway. While Sui is working on the elixir, goes out to make food for the children's mother. And after thinking about something easy to digest, He decides to prepare a healthy meat First, soup. He chops up the vegetables and meat for this, before he fries everything together. Adds water, and at this point Makoto prepares a broth before adding a little soy milk. And after all the ingredients are put together, he cooks everything like a soup until it's ready. Holding the hot soup pot in his hands, he thinks it would be for the children and their mother. Nearby, Sui finishes the elixirs and delivers 3 bottles to Mukuda. If Sui really managed to create a real elixir, so Mukuda checks the status, and after analyzing that those bottles really contain for elixirs all diseases, leaving him completely radiant. He praises the live factory he has now good work, and runs to the children along with He tells the children that they are returning to Dolan, puts them on Fell's back to be able to go on this trip. When everyone is assembled, Mukuda goes up to reminds Fell to go slowly because of the children. Fell agrees and starts running at a graceful pace before accelerating to give that fun ride. Right, a little emotion is never too much. Shortly after, they arrive in Dolan. The children celebrate the tour, and when starts taking the orc out of the storage, they remember that they intended to sell him able to pay the price of the priest. Mukuda says he found a rare medicine capable of healing their making them very excited. He explains that he can't just give the medicine for free. This scares the children a little. Makoto then says that as a merchant, to exchange something for this medicine, and Daryl at that time asks how much it costs. Makoto says it only costs a giant monster who can pay for his rare medicine, and so the children are very happy with this exchange. After everything is settled, he delivers the medicine to Iris and even presents the children with a pot of soup. Relieved to know that the mother will be fine, they start After calming down. Daryl tells Mukuda he grows up when he wants to become a merchant, inspiring the boy, stating that he will use his ability of the box to work as a merchant and do good business with the determination of this boy begins to move himself. Even Mukuda wishes good luck for these 2 children. After that, they thank him for the help and leave happy. While he is satisfied with having helped all these 2, he remembers that he was coming back to Dungeon and decides to have a celebration before cooking. He checks everyone's levels they have gained a huge amount of experience. The highlight, of course, goes to Sui, quadrupled his level, going from 22 to level 88. How much his relatives have grown, Mukuda decides to look at his own statistics. But unfortunately, he remains as strong as a broken discovers pedestal. That his online supermarket ability has at least leveled up. When he opened it, Mukuda saw 2 new ramifications, giving him the option to choose between 2 specializations. While he was confused with the choices, others were curious and asked what he was doing. Then Mukuda says that he doesn't know which skill tree to choose. Tells him to get the hamburger ability, but prefers sweets, so Mukuda chooses the sweet option. Fell gets very angry at Mukuda for ignoring his opinion like a mad lion. That he is still a pig for sweets. As soon as a new sweet menu appears, everything to salivate in front of the prize cakes, so brother, things are good. Chooses some options, making a big order, removing the travel box. After opening all the boxes, he puts several prize cakes on the table, so give everyone a piece for each of them to start eating with enthusiasm. While his family devours the delicious sweets, everyone was super calm. Still, Mukuda says he also brought a cream pudding. Puts the pudding, shaking there on a plate, them to take, and the cream rocambole for himself too. And when he drinks a little black coffee with rocambole, Fell judges him for drinking that bitter liquid. Mukuda still defends himself, saying that the bitter coffee matches perfectly with the sweet of the cream. Meanwhile, Sue and Dora ask for more pudding. Mukuda warns that they will end up getting obese if they eat too many sweets. He realizes that he forgot something, and Nelia starts to scream at him for telepathy, you know? While she is making fun of Mukuda for forgetting his offerings, the other powerful gods also became impatient. Even so, Mukuda completely ignores them, remembering the 2 children, feeling sorry for them not being able to taste those hot sweets. Now we see Mukuda there again in the Adventure Guild, where other people cut food, clean, jewelry, and Elan is there giving instructions to each one on how to cut the power of the magic stones to boil water, mentioning that everyone was much more excited after someone conquered the dungeon. Seeing that everyone was busy, the protagonist just hopes they don't forget him. Just at that specific moment, Hugo arrives, irritated by seeing Elan once again wasting time there, and he wonders how he found him. and Hugo replies that he knows very well today in the report of the products received. Nukuda was waiting for him. Only then Elan finally realized that he was standing at the ended door. Up distracting himself so by Hugo drags him to fulfill his responsibilities. And then at that moment he ends up apologizing a lot to leaving Nukuda everything under the care of Marcel. And so he keeps thinking about how terrible Hugo can be. Now, Soz, Hugo thanks the protagonist since the guild lives in a prosperity never seen before. But going straight to the point, he talks about the products in addition to the valuable stock of mimics. They ask him to see inside the bag, where they find dozens of jewels. Everyone is impressed, especially Nukuda, who had not even checked this content. Fell comments that it is the first time he sees something and inside the once bag. Again thinks as the same. It contained gems. They ended up not deteriorating or losing their value. Hugo believes that the gems of the dungeon are very sought after, and that is why it is impossible for them to buy in a very large quantity. In addition, he was reprimanded for spending the budget with the Earth Dragon. The Guild of Merchants asked to buy part of that the Guild of Adventurers cannot keep, and Nukuda remembers that making the direct purchase with them was not a good idea. Hugo explains that this is just to avoid fraud, but that with him supervising, there would be no problem. Nukuda then understands, and he says that he could sell the gems. He is affiliated with the Guild of Merchants. Hugo then asks if he knows how to evaluate the objects, because merchants are very difficult and can reduce the price in an instant. When he replies that he does not know, Hugo offers to accompany him. The prestige of the guild is at stake. Eren goes there and offers to go alone, saying that Hugo does not fall for it, knowing that he just wants to run away from he has a lot of role and tries to reward him in another way. They were flooding with applications, so he had to solve while Hugo goes, Eren keeps doing the job. On the contrary, he would sell that thing there, right? That Eren ends up looking at every morning. However, Eren only forbids him to sell that thing there, bro. Is the Earth Dragon transformed so into he agrees to do his job, leaving Nukuda wondering who is the real guild master, Hugo or Eren. So when they leave, the other three say again that they were hungry, and he already warns Hugo that he will eat something and that they will meet in 2 hours in front of the guild. When they arrive at a skewer shack, he asks the seller to give him some. So he buys 76 skewers, and while the three gluttons devour all the dishes, they comment on how salty and hard the food is. But when they finish, seeing that 2 hours have already passed, they meet Hugo at the Traders Guild. There they meet Adrian, the local master, and they invite him to enter a private room. Office. They also meet Ruslan, evaluator, an old man who cleans his monocle, and he mentions that it had been a long time since he had seen the dungeon he will have to evaluate them very carefully and ask them to show them. Opens the first briefcase with all the common gems, and when inspecting them, Ruslan is impressed wonderful with shine, stating that they are of very high quality, with an absurd transparency without impurities. But Hugo explains that this is not showing a chest. He reveals that there is a much brighter gem. Just looking at the old man recognizes that it is an imperial gem that had not been seen for decades, and that they say brought with all these absurd things. They say Nukuda is speechless, and after analyzing and evaluating all the gems, offers a payment of 7,460 gold coins to the protagonist. As Nukuda did not understand the matter, he was about to refuse this offer and says the vice master of the Adventurers Guild, he has a certain knowledge and knows that the rarity of the imperial topaz makes it known as a mythical gem, highly valued among collectors. In addition, the other diamonds are Masmora have a large size, so the price offered is very low. He warns them that if they dare to disrespect their adventurer, they would have no more business in the future. This makes Adrian and Ruslan very nervous. They immediately correct the payment, updating the value, offering 9,480 and when gold asked coins what he thinks, Hugo replies that it is leaving the merchants relieved. When returning to the guild, they tell everything. Nukuda thanks very much for the help. The elf laughs, saying that if he had negotiated, he would have offered double for the gems. Although no one takes this seriously, right? Then he asks the protagonist if he has a letter from the guild. Takes it out and asks if immediately Eren exchanges for another gold, that he was promoted to rank A, since he could not continue as rank C after conquering the Masmora. Now being rank A, he can accept the requests of the, and Nukuda cannot believe what he tries to return the letter, saying that it is too early to go up in rank. If he is sure of all this, because the ranker adventurer receives 10 veils for free to eat at the guild's cafeteria, and also has discounts on lodging. They would no longer have any limitations being able to choose any mission. When Fell hears this, gets very excited, encouraging Mukada to accept his rank. Finally, Aaron once again wishes that he obtain great results as an adventurer, and so Mukada accepts this letter. Now returning to his kitchen, Dora asks him what they are going to eat, and he answers that meat, everyone's favorite. With everything on the table, he takes the meat out of the portal. The meat grinder from the online store has finally come to the end of his useful life. And then, my friend, he asked Sui to be able to make a. He ended up grinding the meat, so they already had a meat cake with a lot of ground meat. Now, further on, we have a grated bread staying in the milk sauce, and he chops some chives. And then they are sautéed in melted butter in the frying pan. When the onion is transparent, add vegetables, and in a bowl of ground meat, adding a grated bread, also already wet, and the sautéed vegetables. And after that, we add the beaten salt, pepper from the ground kingdom, at the time, nutmeg. All this is needed until it gains a consistency. When the cake mixture is ready, we line it with some strips of half bacon of the mixture, and press to remove the air. In the center go the quail eggs, and then again we cover meat. Finally, cover with the remaining bacon, wrapping everything in aluminum to take foil it to the oven. After the necessary minutes, Mukada takes the food out of the oven, and to make sure it was with a toothpick. After confirming that everything was correct, and starts preparing the ingredients, the meat broth, and it was in a very tasty way. He adds the spices, and after stirring for a while, finally the sauce is ready. He cuts the cake into thick slices, ends up covering it with the newly prepared. When seeing a good appearance, the three gluttons are fascinated with all that. Even Fell, who pretended to be sleeping, was staring at the food, drooling. And when they try it, the three end up standing out for the taste. Obviously, it's great, the seasoning, and our protagonist, and they like it so much that they ask for a second all dish. Rested now. Mukada was preparing a great variety of sweets Hugo and his family, as a form of thanks. And meanwhile, we see that in the world of the gods is there, irritated, because Mukada did anything from the new establishment. On the other hand, the other gods begin to wonder if there are stores that sell alcoholic drinks, beauty products, and all that. And Hephaestus suggests that, to confirm this, they thwart a little more the old world of Mukada. Everyone agrees, and shook their heads. And the next day we see the poor Yella, once again, doing the work. And there, we also see Mukada delivering a basket with all the sweets he bought. Hugo, a little confused, asks about the biscuit in the form of a girl. To avoid details and explanations that he possibly wouldn't understand, it is like a symbol in his country. This, Hugo wants to confirm if he is really to give that amount of such valuable products. And our protagonist asks him to accept and enjoy the sweets in the face of insistence. Hugo ends up accepting. That when he returns home, the whole family enjoyed the next day. Fell asks Mukada what they are going to have for lunch. Even though they just had breakfast, but it's for him to start thinking about the future, right? Mukada admits that he would like to take a break. Appear, asking if he will leave him without food. And Fell doesn't care that he rests, but remember that he is the only one who knows, so he has to cook for everyone. Even if Mukada was only referring to preparing something simple, meat with vegetables, there, to be able to finish with yakisoba. Fell encouraged him to do this, leaving him wanting to eat grilled meat. What they didn't realize is that they will end up wondering if some hermit could solve a big problem. So we see Mukada being called by someone who asks one thing after another, almost paying with his own life. After that he meets Hugo, and Hugo tells him that Dolan is famous for his dungeon. His blacksmiths are proud to forge weapons, and that's why no one wants to make pots. Besides that, most blacksmiths are dwarves, they do jobs that are excellent jobs, an absurd quality. But they have a difficult temperament, and when they drink alcohol, they forget the service. So it is to convince them by offering drinks instead of money. And this makes Mukada think about the extra payment for the dungeon items. And also ask them to tell them, and then they go to lunch, which ends with the preparation of a meat soup. While they eat, Mukada goes to the store to buy drinks and orders a Japanese whiskey. When the drink arrives, he realizes strength that decreases and his magic increases. He decides to order a barbecue from the blacksmith. When he arrives at the forge, he explains his request, asks what kind of weapon Mukada clarifies that he needs a kitchen. The dwarf asks him to forget that, and almost expels him before leaving. Mukuda asks if he likes, and that draws the dwarf's attention. Mukuda shows him a whiskey he had bought. When he opens the bottle, the aroma begins. The dwarf, who asks to taste it, that it is delicious, and asks what drink it was. Because he had never tried something so good. Seeing how much the dwarf liked it, Mukuda takes the opportunity to negotiate bottles in addition to the payment if he accepts the job. After a few seconds thinking, the dwarf agrees. There are 10 bottles in addition to the payment. Mukuda accepts, no problem for him. While the dwarf drinks, Mukuda asks it would take him to complete the order, and the blacksmith suggests that he return days 3 and informs that the cost will be 350 gold coins. The old man introduces himself and then back to the room. Mukuda reflects on and how it usually pleases the thinking gods. About it, he remembers that should have made his offerings a long time ago. As always, he had forgotten. So he starts communicating with the gods, and the gods start criticizing him for ignoring all of them. One of them even threatens to punish him by tying him to a stone. Mukuda apologizes and agrees to hear everyone's requests, asking for all the cakes from the new store he unlocked. Hephaestus and Vargan start asking for something a little different. They demand that the next time they unlock a new place, they choose a drink store. Hephaestus reveals that he examined the item, discovering that he unlocked the next place at level 40. So the two order Mukuda to go up as fast as possible. Abby comments that it would be very easy if he went back, and the 3 order him to go immediately. Kishin interrupts, saying that the next place should be a pharmacy to be able to buy beauty products. Little Rusoka asks for a fruit market in Hokkaido, and Mukuda is impressed with how much they started to know about their world. Right. At the same time, he makes it clear that intend to force himself to level up. Threatens to stop sending return the blessings if they continue to insist. And upon hearing this, everyone panics, and promising to reflect on their actions. Kishin then suggests increasing the spending limit to be able to celebrate the opening of a new place. And everyone agrees to double the limit. Mukuda accepts and asks for them to choose one by products. One. They select what they want. Mukuda is exhausted with his inconstancies. Right. And after that absurd conversation, he decides to cook something special. To prepare a huge basilisk, rubbing it in salt, then putting the frozen pilaf inside it, and closing some bamboo skewers so as not to leak. Then he ties the legs to keep the shape with oil and takes it to the preheated oven, taking care to brush again from time to time. While the meat is browning, he creates plates and with stone magic, shaping them inside until they are ready. When the baked basilisk stuffed with pilaf is ready, Mukuda cuts it and serves it. Simple but delicious. Dora comments that the skin is crunchy and the meat is very juicy. Loves the rice soaked in the juice and of the basilisk, with strong and subtle flavors. A complete dish. Mukuda remembers that the bones are very sharp, but his companions eat them without any concern. For dessert, he prepares a pudding for everyone. And now that they have conquered the dungeon and earned money, they wonder what they will do next. But for now, they will only sleep. Meanwhile, the gods enjoy the meal. On Mukuda and his evolution. He thinks that if he were in a beverage store, he could try many drinks, that it is difficult to make him rise on purpose. The gods conclude that Mukuda did not forbid them to give him some extra skills, to give him the blessing that doubles the experience he acquires. Next day, Mukuda already finds the blacksmith to deliver his drinks. They go to the warehouse to see the barbecue, and Ash begins to mention that he made some adjustments to the project to keep the price at 300 coins because of the drinks. He also suggests taking more time to finalize the details. Mukuda agrees, since that way they can eat without wasting time. He takes off all the meat and Dora, starts cooking. Eager to try the new food, are there, and Ash arrives with some homemade sausages and asks if he can use the barbecue. Mukuda allows it without problems, watching the dwarf cooking his sausages. He tells Mukuda that he could eat some later, which the young man is grateful for. Mukuda slices the sauce on the table, and so the barbecue is ready. Pork meat, bull meat with blood horns there, right? And immediately, the 3 gluttons feast on that food. Fell, of course, highlights that the meat was crunchy, juicy, and at that moment, Mukuda appears with more meat and recommends that they try it with a wasabi sauce. When he does that, the dwarf is delighted with the taste and texture. The others also prepare to try, so when they do, they are amazed. At that moment, Ali announces sausages are ready, and he offers it to Mukuda. When he tries it, he can't contain his smile, realizing how delicious these sausages are. At that moment, the dwarf mentions that he will eat them accompanied by a good drink. Mukoda asks him to wait a moment, and he goes to an isolated place to get the ice, water, and a glass of myrtle. He puts the ice in the glass, pours the whiskey, water with gas, and finally squeezes a little lemon. Once that's done, he returns, and delivers the drink to the old man. The dwarf, after drinking everything, says that in a foreign country, the drink is called highball. Staring at the glass, he comments that nowadays it is very difficult to get ice. In addition, bubbling water served in myrtle is definitely not something common. Mukoda is surprised to realize this, but Alex, who is there, asks him not to take him for a fool, right? And no wonder everyone says that his workshop is better than Mukoda even more, who asks if he is really that important. Confused, Alex at that moment asks who he thought he was. Mukoda responds coldly that he thought he was just an alcoholic, and the guy replied laughing, admitting that he is certainly right. He also comments that he never imagined that the guy Mukoda was someone capable of conquering that dungeon. Mukoda asks how he knows that, and the old man replies that the city has already commented on the subject. Hearing this, Mukoda is only in silence, the three gluttonous colleagues there who are always with him. But that's it, man. That's how we end another great episode here on the channel. Don't forget to leave a like to the channel and activate the bell. The important ones for us to continue following the history of our Mukoda. Guys, that big hug and see you next time. Thanks.